All right, so let's get you some updates from the battlefield in Ukraine, where both sides are engaged in fierce fighting over the town of Soledar. Now, Russia has said that it has taken control of Soledar, and it did so on the eve of the 12th of January. However, Ukraine insists that its troops are still holding out against the pro-Moscow forces. Now, over the course of this war, Ukraine has shifted its stance from a defensive position to now an offensive one. And one of the prominent of these postures, which of course remains the recapture of the key city of Kherson. Now, even in Soledar, where Ukraine is resisting a pretty intense offensive by the Russians, experts say that the control of Soledar and its huge salt mines will have a symbolic, military and a commercial value for Russia. The salt mines are located in the suburbs of the town. Russia has once again replaced its military commander, however, in Ukraine just 3 months after he had been appointed. Now, the move comes after a series of battlefield setbacks for Moscow, and top military officer Valery Gerasimov, who is the chief of the general staff, will now be the new commander of the unified group of forces in Ukraine. He is, of course, replacing Sergei Surovikin, who goes by the nickname General Armageddon, as in charge of the Ukraine war. Surovikin had overseen the recent brutal attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Now, many experts are viewing the Russian President Vladimir Putin's move to replace his top commander in Ukraine as a sign of military disarray and also his growing impatience with his military generals. Now, analysts say that the move is a sign of Putin becoming exasperated by the Ukrainian resistance, but more importantly, it also raises the question on the fault lines within the Russian army's command structure. But although, remember, in terms of what's been happening, in terms of the battle lines not shifting, at this moment, neither side can actually claim to have an upper hand in the offensive. The war has dragged on for over 11 months, and there is one major factor that is acting like a catalyst to Russia's frustration, and that's, of course, the continuous supply of Western weapons to Ukraine. In the latest, Poland has said it intends to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine as part of the international coalition, and Germany has okayed this move. Now, Kyiv has been requesting for heavy military vehicles such as the German-made Leopard 2 tanks, which of course represents a significant step up in terms of Western support for Ukraine. Last September, Kyiv had requested the fast-track NATO membership. NATO had said that it has an open-door policy to Ukraine, but has not said whether it will accelerate moves towards Kyiv's possible accession. Now, such a move will put Russia in a pretty tricky position. Meanwhile, the city of Siversk in Ukraine's Donetsk region, residents are living in the bitterly cold basements of the damaged buildings to hide from daily shelling. The remaining residents are using scarves to stay warm.
Знаєте, мені здається, тут потрібно все, починаючи від туалетного папіру і закінчуючи просто їжею, одягом, теплом, дровами, буржуйками, світлом. Просто тут потрібно все.
Це так ми і виживаємо. Ходимо, плачемо, палички збираємо. Нікому не нужні люди.
Як ситуація з обстрілом?
Ну, оце ж ви чуєте. Оце така ситуація в нас. Як лягаємо вечором спати, це невиносимо. Думаєш, чи ти піднімешся, чи не піднімешся.
All right, now to give us more perspective in terms of what exactly is unfolding between Russia and Ukraine at this point of time, we're being joined by Mr. Maximilian Hess, who's a Russia-Ukraine war analyst, and he's joining us live from London. Now, Mr. Hess, at this point of time, the fighting, it appears, is centered around this crucial town of Soledar, where both sides are claiming that they control this town. What do you make of these claims and counterclaims that both Russia and Ukraine are making?
Well, I would say that today the Ukrainians have certainly indicated that the Russian forces control the majority of the town. But Soledar is one of 3 key towns in the northeast of Donetsk Oblast, the Donetsk region in eastern Ukraine, that Russia has been seeking to invade and annex, that really controls access to the west of it. So the 3 cities are from the north, Siversk, which you just featured, Soledar in the center, and then Bakhmut. Thousands of Russian troops have died attempting to take these towns for months now. And if they are able to solidify their gains in Soledar, it would represent a symbolic victory, but I don't think it's going to change the tactical layout of the war and really enable Russian forces to be able to advance further west into Donetsk. It may stop Ukrainian forces who are fighting to liberate territory in the north, in Luhansk Oblast. It may, however, stop them from being able to advance there. But I think it's an important symbolic potential victory from Moscow's view, but not an important tactical one.
All right, very interesting. Now, what we've been witnessing over the course of the last week is a preparedness on the part of the United States and also other allies, such as France and Germany, to send armored vehicles and tanks to Ukraine. Now, this is something that the Western allies of Ukraine had not done at the beginning of the war. What do you think has changed on the ground? Is it Ukraine that is now calling the shots on the battlefield?
No, sadly, and much to my regret as a German, the German government is not there yet with supporting these measures, but a lot of other European governments, including France, but also significantly Poland, are pushing for this measure. I think that there is just a slow realization of the fact that the longer Moscow and Putin's invasion continues, the more Ukraine is going to need to replace the armor that it has now with Western armor. So eventually it will get to the stage where the Ukrainian army has to fight entirely with Western armaments. I think it is important that we begin the training, begin the supplies now to ensure that the Ukrainians are able to continue to defend themselves and hopefully liberate more of their territory from Putin's occupation.
All right, now this is the 11th month of the fighting. The fighting started on the 24th of February last year. A lot of people thought that the battle lines will freeze in winter. That did not happen. How much further do you think this war will progress before some kind of a settlement can in fact be reached?
Well, the battle lines haven't shifted significantly throughout the winter. The last major change was Ukraine's ability to liberate the northern or right bank of the Dnieper River down in the Kherson region back at the beginning of November. This advance in Soledar that the Russians may consolidate represents only 4 or 5 kilometers, so it's not a really big particular change. But of course, this war has been going on not just since Putin decided to vastly escalate it last February, but since he first attacked Ukraine in 2014. I think the reality is that Putin has essentially hedged his entire government and his entire raison d'etre on this conflict and on waging it. So until it finally dawns upon Putin that he's unable to achieve his goals and that the best he can hope for is a Pyrrhic victory, he will continue to invade and he will continue to cause needless death.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Hess, for joining us and getting us all those insights from London. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.